The transport ship broke through the atmosphere of the neutral moon, and Amy Rodriguez pressed her face against the small window. Below, the massive space station glowed against the darkness. Valor Station, the most important military academy in the entire Galactic Coalition. And somehow, Earth had gotten 50 humans accepted into its training program. Amy pulled back from the window and checked her uniform one more time. Everything had to be perfect. She was 26 years old and had spent 6 years in the Earth Marine Corps. She knew how to handle herself in a fight, knew how to lead troops, knew how to survive in the worst conditions Earth could throw at her. But this was different. This was the galaxy watching to see if humans were good enough. The ship docked with a heavy clang. Amy grabbed her gear bag and followed the other humans through the airlock. The moment she stepped into the station, she realized just how small humans really were compared to most species out there. A massive reptilian creature stood near the entrance, easily 9 feet tall with scales that shimmered green and gold under the lights. Its eyes tracked the humans as they passed, cold and calculating. That was a Krenth, Amy remembered from the briefing files. They came from a heavy gravity world and were known for their strength and endurance. Further down the corridor, a group of insect-like beings clustered together. Their bodies were covered in dark chitin, and their compound eyes reflected light in strange patterns. The Vrix. They communicated through clicks and chirps, and their homeworld had 3 times Earth's gravity. They were fast, deadly, and coordinated like a hive mind. But it was the cat-like creatures that made Amy pause. They walked on 2 legs but moved with the fluid grace of Earth's big cats. Orange and black stripes covered their fur, and their muscles rippled with every step. Retractable claws clicked against the metal floor. These were the Vakrians, and even the smallest of them stood a head taller than Amy. One of the Vakrians, larger than the rest, turned to look at the arriving humans. His amber eyes swept over them with clear dismissal. He said something to his companions in a language that sounded like growls and purrs. Whatever he said made the other Vakrians bare their fangs in what might have been laughter. Amy kept her expression neutral and kept walking. She had dealt with prejudice before. People who thought women couldn't be Marines. People who thought she was too small, too weak, too soft for combat. She had proven them all wrong. She would prove these aliens wrong too. The humans were led to a large assembly hall, where a Vakrian instructor waited. This one was even larger than the others, standing at least 7 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed impossibly broad. His fur was darker, almost black with burnt orange stripes. Scars crossed his muzzle and arms, the marks of someone who had seen real combat. "I am Thraknor," the instructor said, his voice deep enough to vibrate in Amy's chest. "I am your combat instructor. For the next 6 months, you will train here alongside the finest warriors the Coalition has to offer. You will learn our methods, our tactics, our way of war." His amber eyes found the humans in the crowd. "Some of you come from worlds we classify as dangerous. Earth is one such world. But do not let this make you arrogant. Many species here come from worlds far more hostile than yours. Worlds with higher gravity, more dangerous predators, harsher conditions." Thraknor began walking through the assembled students. "You will be assigned to mixed species squads. You will train together, eat together, and fight together. By the end of this program, you will understand what it means to be a Coalition warrior." The squad assignments came quickly. Amy found herself grouped with 3 aliens. First was Solus, a Krenth who towered over her. His scales were a deep emerald color, and when he looked down at Amy, his expression was unreadable. Second was Click 7, a Vrix whose antennae twitched constantly. The insectoid warrior regarded Amy with what might have been curiosity. Third was Kessel, a young Vakrian who seemed smaller than his kin but still stood several inches taller than Amy. "Human," Kessel said, his accent thick but understandable. "I am called Kessel. What is your designation?" "Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez," she replied. You can call me Amy. Kessal's ears flicked back. Amy. This is a strange sound. But I will remember it. Amy. The first week was brutal. Not because of the physical training, though that was intense. The real challenge was the constant doubt from everyone around her. In the combat simulations, her squad mates hesitated to trust her with important tasks. When they practiced hand-to-hand fighting, opponents went easy on her, assuming she would break easily. Even Kessal, her own squad mate, seemed uncertain about having a human on the team. During weapons training, Amy excelled. Her marksmanship scores were high. Her tactical thinking was sound, and she moved through the obstacle courses with practiced efficiency. But it didn't seem to matter. The other species saw her smooth skin, her lack of claws or armor plating, her relatively small size, and dismissed her as weak. The breaking point came during a team combat exercise in Week 3. Amy's squad was pitted against a team led by a senior Vakrion named Draktesh. The exercise used stun weapons and was supposed to teach tactics and teamwork, but Draktesh seemed more interested in proving a point. His team focused on Kessal, perhaps seeing the young Vakrion as a weak link. They cornered him in a narrow corridor, and 3 of them attacked at once. Kessal fought well, his claws and fangs flashing, but he was outnumbered. One of the enemy Vakrions grabbed him and threw him hard against the wall. Amy heard something crack. Without thinking, Amy moved. She closed the distance in seconds, coming up behind the Vakrion who had thrown Kessal. She didn't try to match strength with strength. Instead, she used leverage and technique. Her arm hooked around the Vakrion's elbow joint. Her body weight shifted. And suddenly, the large predator was bent backward, with his arm locked in a painful position. Submit, Amy said calmly. The Vakrion growled but tapped his free hand against the floor. The universal signal for yielding. Amy released him and moved to check on Kessal. I am functional, the young Vakrion said, though he was clearly hurt. You did not need to intervene. You're my squad mate, Amy replied. That's what we do. But when the exercise ended and the teams returned to the observation room, Amy saw Instructor Thraknor watching her with narrowed eyes. His tail lashed back and forth, a sign of irritation she had learned to recognize. That evening, instead of dismissing them to their quarters, Thraknor ordered everyone to the main training hall. All the students gathered, whispering among themselves. The Vakrions looked particularly interested. Their ears perked forward with attention. Thraknor stood in the center of the hall, his massive form commanding attention. There has been much discussion about the humans, he began. His voice carried to every corner of the room. Some question whether your species belongs here. You are small. Your world's gravity is weak compared to many of ours. You have no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armored skin. You are soft. Amy felt the eyes of dozens of aliens turn toward the human students. Some looked curious, others dismissive, a few even sympathetic. But Amy kept her gaze on Thraknor, waiting. I propose we end this discussion with a simple demonstration. The instructor continued. His amber eyes locked onto Amy. You, the human who thinks she can fight Vakrians. Step forward. Amy moved out of the crowd, her boots echoing on the metal floor. She stopped a respectful distance from Thraknor and stood at attention. What is your name, human? Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, sir. Tell me, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, what is the heaviest weight you have ever lifted? Amy thought for a moment. In training, sir, I deadlifted 405 pounds. A ripple of reaction went through the crowd. Some species found this impressive. Others, particularly the Krenth and larger Vakrions, seemed amused by such a modest number. Thraknor's fangs showed in what might have been a smile. I weigh 437 pounds. I was born on a colony world, with 1.7 times your Earth's gravity. My bones are dense. My muscles are built for power and speed. He spread his arms wide. I am the largest warrior in this academy. So here is your demonstration, human. Lift me. The hall fell completely silent. Lift me off the ground. Thraknor continued. Completely off the ground. If you can do this, I will personally ensure that no one questions humanity's place here again. If you cannot, then perhaps your species should reconsider their application to the Coalition military program. Amy looked up at the massive Vakrian. He outweighed her maximum deadlift. He was built like a tank, all muscle and dense bone. His center of gravity would be high because of his height. This wasn't just difficult. It was meant to be impossible. But Amy had not survived 6 years in the Marines by backing down from challenges. She had not earned her place at this academy by being weak, and she would not let her entire species be judged as failures because of one instructor's prejudice. What method of lift, sir? She asked calmly. Thraknor's ears flicked in surprise. Clearly, he expected her to refuse. Any method you choose, human. Simply get me off the ground. Amy nodded slowly. Understood, sir. I'll need to position myself properly. Position yourself however you wish. Amy stepped closer to the massive Vakrian, her mind already calculating angles, weight distribution, and technique. Around her, the entire academy held its breath and watched. The entire training hall watched as Amy circled around instructor Thraknor. She moved slowly, studying him from every angle. The massive Vakrian stood still, his amber eyes tracking her movement. He looked confident, certain that this small human would fail. Amy's squadmate Solus leaned down to whisper to her, "You do not have to do this. It is not a fair challenge. Even I would struggle to lift him, and my species is bred for strength." But Amy barely heard him. Her mind was working through the problem like she would any combat situation. Assess the target, identify weaknesses, formulate a plan, execute with precision. That was how she had been trained. That was how she survived. She thought back to her training on Earth, the endless hours in the gym, pushing her body to its limits, the deadlifts, the squats, the core work. Her instructors had always told her that technique mattered more than raw strength. A smaller fighter could defeat a larger one with the right leverage, the right positioning, the right application of force. But this was different. Thraknor wasn't just large, he was enormous. 437 pounds of dense muscle and heavy bone. And he came from a world with higher gravity than Earth, which meant his body was built to handle even more weight than his own mass. Amy completed her circle and stopped in front of the instructor. "Sir, I need to explain what I am going to do." Thraknor's ears flicked forward with interest. "Proceed. I will position myself behind you and perform a lift called a deadlift. I will need you to remain rigid and not resist. Don't try to help me, but don't try to make it harder either. Just stand normally." "Acceptable," Thraknor rumbled. "Though I assure you, I will not need to resist. Physics will do that for me." Amy ignored the comment and moved behind him. She could hear whispers from the crowd. Most of them were betting against her. Even some of the other humans looked doubtful. Only a few faces showed any confidence in her ability to succeed. As she positioned herself, Amy's mind drifted to the briefings she had received before coming to the academy. Earth scientists had spent years studying alien biology. Once first contact was made, they discovered something interesting. Most alien species had evolved in ways that made sense for their environments. The Krenth were strong because their high-gravity world demanded it. The Vrix were fast because their world was full of ambush predators. The Vakrians were apex predators because they had no natural enemies on their homeworld. But humans were different. Earth was classified as a death world, not because of one thing, but because of everything. The gravity wasn't the highest, but it was enough. The predators weren't the largest, but they were everywhere. The diseases, the weather, the sheer hostility of the environment all combined to create evolutionary pressure unlike anything most species had faced. Humans evolved to run for days, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They evolved to throw rocks and spears with deadly accuracy. They evolved to climb, swim, fight, and survive in conditions that would kill most other species. But most importantly, they evolved with something unique. The human body had limiters, biological safeties that prevented people from hurting themselves by using too much strength. Muscles could theoretically generate far more force than they normally did. But the brain restricted that force to prevent torn tendons, broken bones, and damaged joints. Under normal circumstances, a human used maybe 60% of their actual strength. But under stress, under the rush of adrenaline, those limiters could be temporarily overridden. That was why human mothers could lift cars off trapped children. That was why soldiers could carry wounded comrades for miles. That was why a properly trained human could perform feats that seemed impossible based on their size. Amy had trained for 6 years to access more of that strength safely. Through progressive overload, through technique, through mental conditioning. She couldn't override the limiters completely without risking injury, but she could push them further than an untrained person. She could access 80, maybe even 85% of her true strength when needed. The question was whether that would be enough. Amy planted her feet shoulder-width apart and bent at her knees and hips. Her back remained straight, her core tight. She had performed this movement thousands of times with barbells and weights. Now she would perform it with a living, breathing alien who weighed more than she had ever lifted before. She reached around Thraknor's midsection. Her arms barely made it all the way around his massive frame. She adjusted her grip, locking her hands together in front of his abdomen. She could feel his muscles, hard as stone beneath his fur. This was really happening. "Ready, sir," she said quietly. "Proceed whenever you wish, human. This will be educational for everyone watching." Amy took a deep breath. Then another. She focused on her breathing, on her form, on every muscle in her body. Her legs contained the largest and most powerful muscles in the human body. The glutes, quadriceps, hamstrings. These were the muscles that had propelled her ancestors across the African savanna, that had helped humans become the most successful endurance hunters on Earth. She took one more breath and began. At first, nothing happened. Amy's muscles tensed. Her legs began to generate force, but Thraknor remained firmly on the ground. The Vakrion's weight seemed impossible, like trying to lift a boulder. Amy could hear someone in the crowd chuckle. She ignored it. She adjusted her stance slightly, getting her hips lower, her back tighter. She thought about all the times she had been told she was too small, too weak, too female for the Marines. She thought about every obstacle course she had conquered, every mission she had completed, every challenge she had overcome. She thought about the 50 humans who had come to this academy, all of them counting on her to prove they belonged here. Amy's jaw clenched. Her muscles fired again. Harder this time. Every fiber in her legs activated. Her core tightened like a steel cable. Her upper back and shoulders locked into position. And slowly, impossibly, Thraknor began to rise. Inch by inch, the massive Vakrion lifted off the deck. Amy's face showed strain, veins standing out on her neck and forearms, sweat beading on her forehead. Her legs shook with the effort, but she didn't stop. She kept lifting, kept pushing, kept proving that humans were more than they seemed. The hall had gone completely silent. Even the whispering had stopped. Every eye was fixed on the impossible sight before them. A human, barely 5.5 feet tall, lifting the largest predator in the academy. Amy brought Thraknor to waist height and held him there. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Long enough that there could be no doubt. No argument that it was a fluke or trick. She was actually lifting him. Then, with the same careful control, she began to lower him. She didn't drop him, didn't let her form break. She maintained perfect technique all the way down until Thraknor's feet touched the deck again. Only then did she release her grip and step back. Amy was breathing hard, her muscles burning with fatigue, but she remained standing. She didn't collapse, didn't show weakness. She simply stood there, waiting for the instructor's response. Thraknor turned slowly to face her. His expression was unlike anything Amy had seen on a Vakrion before. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated. His ears lay flat against his head. His tail had gone completely still. In the briefing files, Amy had learned that these were all signs of shock in his species. "How?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How is this possible?" It wasn't really a question, but Amy answered anyway. "Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, sir. We learned to be strong because we had no other choice." The hall remained silent. Amy could see aliens looking at each other, reassessing everything they thought they knew about humans. The Krenth looked impressed. The Vrix's antennae were waving in what might have been respect. Even the other Vakrians seemed stunned. Thraknor continued to stare at her. Then, slowly and deliberately, he raised his right fist and placed it over his heart. It was the Vakrian salute of warrior respect, something Amy had never seen him give to anyone except senior coalition officers. "I weigh 437 pounds, he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I was born on a 1.7 gravity world. I have trained for 20 cycles as a warrior, and this human lifted me like I was a training weight." He turned to address the entire hall. "I challenged Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez to humiliate her species. Instead, she has taught me humility." Thraknor looked back at Amy. "You said you deadlifted 405 pounds in training. I outweigh that number. How did you lift me?" Amy straightened up, still catching her breath. "Sir, I used about 85% of my maximum capacity. Humans have biological limiters that restrict our strength under normal conditions. With training, we can access more of that restricted strength. In emergencies, humans have been known to perform even greater feats." "You mean you were not even using your full strength?" Kessal's voice came from the crowd, full of disbelief. "No," Amy admitted. "If I had tried to use my full strength, I might have injured myself, or dropped the instructor, but I was using most of what I can safely access." The implications of this statement rippled through the assembled students. If this relatively small human could lift their largest predator using only 85% of her capacity, what else could humans do? What about their larger males? What about their specialized soldiers? Thraknor's tail began to sway slowly, a sign of deep thought. "The Council was wise to accept humanity into the coalition," he said. "You are dangerous. Not because you are the strongest or the fastest, but because you are far more capable than you appear." He raised his voice again. "From this moment forward, any who question humanity's right to be here will answer to me personally. These humans have earned their place among warriors." The training hall remained quiet for several long moments after Thraknor's declaration. Then, slowly, the silence broke. Solus, the massive Krenth on Amy's squad, rumbled deep in his chest. It took Amy a moment to realize he was laughing. "I doubted your species, human Amy," Solus said, his voice like grinding stones. "I thought you were too soft, too fragile for warfare. I will not make that mistake again." Other voices joined in. Not mocking, but impressed. Even some of the Vakrians who had been the most dismissive of humans were now approaching Amy with new respect in their eyes. She felt dozens of gazes on her, reassessing, recalculating what it meant to be human. Click 7. The Vrix on her squad chittered rapidly. Amy's translator implant struggled to keep up, but the general meaning came through. The insectoid warrior was asking questions about human muscle structure, about training methods, about the biological limiters Amy had mentioned. For the Vrix, this was all fascinating data to be studied and understood. But it was Kessal's reaction that caught Amy's attention the most. The young Vakrian pushed through the crowd until he stood directly in front of her. His amber eyes were bright with something that looked like wonder. "Teach me," he said simply. Amy blinked. "Teach you what?" These techniques you use, this controlled strength, this way of fighting that does not rely on natural weapons. Kessal's ears were perked forward, his tail swishing with excitement. I am the smallest of my kind here. Other Vakrians see me as weak. But you are smaller than me. And you lifted. Instructor Thrak Nor, if you can learn to use your body this way, perhaps I can. 2. End quote. End quote. Amy glanced at Thrak Nor, who was watching the exchange with interest. The instructor gave a small nod, permission to respond however she chose. It is not easy, Amy warned. Human training methods are built around our physiology. Your body is different. What works for me might not work for you, but some things might translate, Kessal pressed. Leverage, technique, the mental discipline you showed. These things are not limited to humans. Yes, Amy considered this. He had a point. You are right. Some principles are universal. But you will need patience. Human training builds slowly, over years. We call it progressive overload. You stress the body, let it recover, then stress it a little more. Over time, you become stronger. I have time, Kessal said firmly. And I have motivation. Will you teach me? Amy looked at her squad mate, at the determination in his eyes, and made a decision. Yes, I will teach you what I can. The next few days brought changes to Valor Station that no one had anticipated. The story of Amy lifting Thrak Nor spread through the academy like wildfire. Students from other classes, even other training cycles, came to see the humans with new eyes. The mockery stopped. The dismissive comments ended. Instead, there was curiosity and respect. But with that respect came new challenges. Other species wanted to test themselves against humans now. Not to humiliate them, but to understand them. Combat exercises became more intense as alien warriors pushed harder, wanting to see what humans could really do. Amy found herself constantly having to prove that her feat wasn't a one-time fluke. In hand-to-hand combat training, she faced off against a Krenth named Vorak. The massive reptilian warrior outweighed her by at least 200 pounds and had natural armor plating that made him nearly impervious to strikes. But Amy used speed and technique, targeting joint locks and pressure points, turning his strength against him. When she finally got him in a submission hold, Vorak laughed with genuine pleasure. Your species is clever, he said as she released him. You fight like water, flowing around obstacles, rather than trying to break through them. During tactical exercises, the other humans began to shine as well. A Marine named Kyle Harper showed exceptional skills in strategy and leadership. A soldier named Lisa Grant proved to be an expert in stealth and reconnaissance. A pilot named Greg Morrison flew simulated combat missions with reflexes that impressed even the naturally quick Vrix. Humanity's reputation was changing. They were no longer seen as the weak newcomers who needed protection. They were becoming known as the species that looked harmless, but could surprise you. The ambush predators wearing prey animal faces, as Thrak Nor had called them. But not everyone was happy about this change. There was a group of senior students, mostly Vakrians from high-gravity colonies, who felt that humans were getting too much attention. They had spent years earning their place at the academy, and now these newcomers were stealing their spotlight. Their leader was a Vakrian named Draktesh, the same warrior whose team had injured Kessal during the exercise. He was larger than most Vakrians, nearly as big as Thrak Nor himself, and he came from a two-gravity world. He had a reputation for being brutal in combat and dismissive of anyone he considered weak. 2 weeks after Amy's demonstration, Draktesh approached her in the training hall. Amy was working with Kessal on proper deadlift form, using training weights to teach the young Vakrian the basics of human powerlifting techniques. Human, Draktesh growled, his voice full of contempt. You have impressed many with your trick. But lifting a stationary target is not the same as fighting one. Amy straightened up and faced him. It was not a trick. It was a demonstration of strength, as requested. Strength means nothing if you cannot use it in combat. Draktesh's claws extended slightly, a sign of aggression. I challenge you to a proper match. Full contact sparring. Let us see if your technique can stand against a real warrior. Kesal stepped forward. Draktesh, this is not necessary. Lieutenant Amy has already proven herself. Silence, small one. Draktesh didn't even look at Kesal. I am speaking to the human. What say you? Do you accept my challenge? Or will you hide behind your previous accomplishment? Amy knew this was a trap. Draktesh outweighed her by even more than Thraknor. He was faster, stronger, and had natural weapons that could seriously hurt her even with safety protocols in place. But if she refused, it would undermine everything she had accomplished. It would make her look like a coward. Before she could respond, Instructor Thraknor's voice cut through the tension. Draktesh, you will not challenge students from other training groups without proper authorization. Draktesh turned to face the instructor, but he didn't back down. Sir, I am simply requesting a training match. Is that not what we are here for? To test ourselves against worthy opponents? Thraknor's eyes narrowed. You seek to injure her because she has made you feel inadequate. I seek to prove that humans are not as formidable as everyone now believes, Draktesh corrected. Lifting weights is one thing, combat is another. If humans truly belong here, they should be able to face any opponent. Thraknor was quiet for a moment, his tail swishing slowly. Very well. You may have your match, but it will be supervised, and it will follow standard sparring rules. First submission or knockout ends the fight. Draktesh's fangs showed in a smile. Acceptable. Thraknor turned to Amy. Lieutenant Rodriguez, you are not required to accept this challenge. Draktesh is being aggressive and disrespectful. I can order him to stand down. Amy looked at Draktesh. At the confidence in his posture, at the certainty in his eyes that he would win. She thought about all the times people had underestimated her, all the times she had been told to back down, to let someone else handle it, to accept that some challenges were beyond her. I accept the challenge, sir, Amy said calmly. Kesal made a sound of distress. Amy, he will hurt you. He is too large, too strong. Amy placed a hand on her squadmate's shoulder. You asked me to teach you human techniques. Here is lesson 1. Humans do not back down from challenges just because they are difficult. We face them, we adapt, and we overcome. But how will you fight him? Kesal asked. Your deadlift technique will not help in combat. You are right, Amy agreed. But humans have many techniques. Lifting was just one of them. Combat is another. And we have been practicing combat for as long as we have existed as a species. Word of the challenge spread quickly through the academy. By the next day, when the match was scheduled, the training hall was packed with students and instructors from multiple programs. Everyone wanted to see if the human who had lifted Thraknor could actually fight against one of the academy's most aggressive warriors. Amy stood in the center of the sparring ring, wearing the standard training suit that would register hits and impacts. Across from her, Draktesh loomed like a mountain. He wore the same suit. But on his massive frame, it looked like it might tear at any moment. Thraknor stood at the edge of the ring, ready to supervise. Standard rules. No biting, no eye strikes, no attacks to vital organs. First submission or knockout ends the match. Are both fighters ready? Draktesh dropped into a fighting stance, his claws extended. Ready. Amy took a breath and settled into her own stance. Not the wide, stable stance of powerlifting, but the light, mobile stance of a trained fighter. Her hands came up, her weight balanced on the balls of her feet. Begin, Thraknor commanded. Draktesh charged immediately, using his superior size and speed to try to overwhelm Amy before she could react. His claws swiped through the air, where her head had been a moment before. But Amy was already moving, already adapting. She had learned long ago that in combat, the biggest advantage wasn't strength or speed. It was the ability to think clearly under pressure. And humans, survivors of a death world, excelled at exactly that. Amy ducked under Draktesh's first swipe and immediately rolled to the side. The Vakrian was fast for his size, but he was used to fighting opponents who would try to match his strength. Amy had no intention of doing that. She had watched him during training exercises, studied his patterns, identified his habits. Draktesh fought like most apex predators. He relied on overwhelming force and intimidation. But Amy had spent years fighting opponents who were bigger and stronger than her. She knew that size could be a disadvantage if you knew how to exploit it. Larger fighters had more mass to move, more momentum to control, longer limbs that created wider openings. The key was staying mobile and making him work harder than she did. Draktesh spun and lunged again, his claws reaching for her. Amy sidestepped, and as he passed, she drove her elbow into his ribs. The impact barely phased him through his muscle and natural padding, but that was not the point. She was mapping his body, finding the spots that registered on the training suit sensors, looking for patterns in his movement. The Vakrian growled in frustration and changed tactics. Instead of wild swipes, he began to fight more carefully, using his reach advantage to keep Amy at a distance. His longer arms meant he could strike her while staying out of range of her counters. It was a smart adjustment, and it showed that Draktesh was not just strong but also experienced. Amy circled him, looking for an opening. The crowd around the ring was completely silent, every eye fixed on the fight. She could see Kesal at the edge, his ears flat with worry. Sola stood next to him, his massive form tense. Even Click 7 had stopped chittering and was watching with all the focus the Vrix could manage. Draktesh feinted high and struck low, his clawed hand sweeping toward Amy's legs. She jumped back, but not quite fast enough. His claws caught her thigh, not deep enough to truly injure thanks to the training suit's padding, but enough to register as a scoring hit. The suit beeped once, indicating that Draktesh had landed a blow. The Vakrian's fangs showed in a smile. First blood, human. Or first touch, as your people might say. Shall we continue? Or would you prefer to submit now? Amy did not respond with words. Instead, she attacked. She closed the distance faster than Draktesh expected, getting inside his reach, where his long arms became a liability. Her knee drove up into his midsection, and while it did not hurt him seriously, it forced him to react. He grabbed for her, trying to use his superior strength to pin her. That was exactly what Amy wanted. As Draktesh's arms closed around her, Amy dropped her weight suddenly. The move caught him off balance, his momentum carrying him forward and down. Amy twisted, using his own grip against him. And suddenly, the massive Vakrian was falling. He hit the mat hard with Amy on top of him, already transitioning to a submission hold. Her legs wrapped around one of his arms, hyperextending the elbow joint. Her hands gripped his wrist, applying pressure. It was an armbar, a classic jujitsu technique that humans had refined over centuries of martial arts practice. Size and strength meant nothing once the joint was locked. Physics did the work. Draktesh roared and tried to power out of the hold. His free hand reached back, claws extended, trying to strike Amy. She adjusted her position, keeping his trapped arm between them as a barrier. She applied more pressure to the joint. Not enough to injure, but enough to cause significant pain. Submit, Amy said calmly. Never, Draktesh snarled. He twisted his body, using his superior weight to roll them both. Amy held on, maintaining the lock even as they tumbled. She had practiced this exact scenario hundreds of times, with training partners who outweighed her. The key was not to fight the roll but to use it, to maintain position and pressure throughout the movement. They came to rest with Draktesh on his side, still trapped in the armbar. His free arm was now pinned under his own body weight. Amy increased the pressure on the joint incrementally. Not a sudden jerk that could cause injury, but a steady, controlled application of force that gave him time to make a choice. Submit, she repeated. Draktesh's growl turned into something between a snarl and a whimper. His arm was at the limit of what the joint could handle. One more degree of extension, and something would tear. He knew it. Amy knew it. Everyone watching knew it. Submit, Amy said a third time. Draktesh's free hand slapped the mat 3 times. The universal signal. He was done. Amy immediately released the hold and rolled away, putting distance between them. Thraknor stepped into the ring, his voice carrying across the hall. The match is concluded. Victory goes to Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez by submission. The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens were cheering. Others were talking excitedly among themselves. The Vakrians in particular seemed shocked that one of their own had been defeated by such a small opponent. Draktesh slowly got to his feet, favoring his arm. His ears were flat, his tail low, the posture of a Vakrian who had been humbled. Amy walked over to him and offered her hand in the traditional human gesture of sportsmanship. You fight well. Your strength and speed are impressive. Draktesh looked at her hand for a long moment, then at her face. You did not use strength against me. You used my own force to defeat me. That is what humans do, Amy said. We are not the strongest or fastest. But we learn. We adapt. We find ways to win, despite our disadvantages. Draktesh slowly extended his own hand and grasped hers. His grip was careful now, controlled. I underestimated you. I will not make that error again. He paused, then added in a quieter voice, I challenged you, because I was afraid. Amy raised an eyebrow. Your kind changes things, Draktesh said. You prove that strength is not everything, that natural weapons and armor are not necessary for victory. If this is true, then everything I have believed about being a warrior is wrong. That is frightening. It does not make you less of a warrior, Amy said gently. It just means there is more than one way to be strong. Your way is valid. My way is valid. Both can exist together. Draktesh's ears slowly rose back to a neutral position. Perhaps you are correct. I must think on this. He released her hand and stepped back, offering the Vakrian salute of respect with his uninjured arm. As Draktesh left the ring, Kesal rushed forward and practically tackled Amy with an enthusiastic hug. You did it. I cannot believe you did it. You defeated one of the strongest warriors in the academy. Easy, Amy laughed, trying to breathe through the young Vakrian's embrace. He is not defeated, just beaten in a sparring match. There is a difference. Solus approached more slowly, his reptilian features showing what might have been a smile. You have taught us all a valuable lesson today, human Amy. In my culture, we have a saying, the strongest tree breaks in the storm, but the reed that bends survives. You are like the reed. Click 7 chittered rapidly, and Amy's translator conveyed the message. Query. How much training is required to achieve such skill level? Vrick's combat doctrine may benefit from integration of human grappling techniques. Years of training, Amy replied honestly. I started learning martial arts when I was 12 years old. 14 years of practice. 14 years. Kesal repeated, his excitement dimming slightly. That is a very long time. All worthwhile skills take time to develop, Amy said. But you do not need 14 years to learn the basics. You just need patience and dedication. Instructor Thraknor approached them, his expression unreadable. Lieutenant Rodriguez. That was an impressive display of technique. You have proven that humans possess not only strength but also skill and strategic thinking. Thank you, sir. Thraknor's tail swished slowly. I must admit, when the Coalition accepted Earth's application, I had doubts. Your species seemed too fragile, too prone to injury, too emotional for military service. But I am beginning to understand that we judged you by the wrong standards. He looked around at the assembled students. Humans evolved differently than most species. Where we developed natural weapons, you developed tools. Where we grew stronger, you grew smarter. Where we became specialized, you became adaptable. This makes you dangerous in ways we did not anticipate. So, Thraknor turned back to Amy. I would like to request that you and your fellow humans conduct training sessions for other students. Teach them your techniques, not to replace their own methods, but to supplement them. A warrior who knows many fighting styles is more effective than one who knows only one. Amy blinked in surprise. Sir, I am honored. But are you certain? Some species might resist learning from humans. After today, I doubt that will be a problem, Thraknor said dryly. You have lifted the largest warrior in the academy and defeated one of the most aggressive fighters in single combat. I believe you have earned the right to teach. He raised his voice to address everyone. Starting next week, human instructors will offer supplementary training in their combat techniques. Attendance is optional but recommended. Those who wish to become complete warriors should take advantage of this opportunity. As the crowd began to disperse, Amy felt a strange mixture of pride and responsibility. She had come to Valor Station to learn, to prove that humans belonged in the coalition military. Instead, she had become a teacher, showing the galaxy that humanity had something valuable to offer. Kessal was already talking excitedly about the training sessions, planning which techniques he wanted to learn first. Solus was discussing the physics of leverage with Click 7, both of them fascinated by how Amy had turned Draktesh's strength against him. Other students were approaching, asking questions, requesting to join the training. Amy answered them all patiently, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about Earth, about the other humans back home who were watching and waiting to see if their species would be accepted. She hoped they could see this, could know that humanity had finally found its place among the stars. 3 months had passed since Amy lifted Instructor Thraknor, and Valor Station had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The training sessions she and other humans conducted had become some of the most popular classes at the Academy. Students from every species attended, eager to learn the human approach to combat and physical training. Amy found herself teaching not just fighting techniques, but also the philosophy behind them. She explained how humans viewed conflict as something to be solved rather than simply dominated, how they used intelligence and creativity to overcome superior opponents, how they never gave up, even when victory seemed impossible. Kessel had become her most dedicated student. The young Vakrian trained every day, learning human martial arts, strength training methods, and tactical thinking. He would never be as strong as someone like Draktesh, but he was becoming something else. He was becoming well-rounded, adaptable, and far more effective than anyone had expected. During a recent combat exercise, Kessal had faced off against a much larger Vakrian. Instead of trying to match strength with strength, he used the techniques Amy taught him: joint locks, leverage, positioning. He won the match decisively, and afterward, the defeated Vakrian asked to join the human training sessions. Draktesh had also changed. The aggressive warrior who had challenged Amy now trained alongside her, learning the same techniques he had once dismissed. His pride had been hurt by the defeat, but it had also opened his mind. He realized that there was more to being a warrior than just physical power. He started studying human military history, fascinated by how such a physically average species had conquered their entire planet. Your people fought wars for thousands of years, Draktesh said one day during a training session. You developed hundreds of different fighting styles, weapons, tactics. Most species had 1 or 2 major conflicts before achieving global peace. But humans seemed to thrive on competition and struggle. Amy nodded slowly. It is not something we are proud of. All those wars caused tremendous suffering. But yes, conflict shaped our evolution and our culture. We learned to be good at war because we had so much practice at it. And now you bring those skills to the coalition, Draktesh said. Some see this as dangerous. A species so skilled at warfare joining a peaceful alliance. We are not warlike, Amy corrected. We are survivors. There is a difference. Humans do not seek conflict, but when it comes, we know how to handle it. That is what the coalition needs. Not warriors who only know how to fight, but warriors who know when to fight and how to win with minimal casualties. Draktesh considered this. You have given me much to think about, human Amy. My entire life, I believed that might made right. That the strongest deserved to lead, and the weak deserved to follow. But you have shown me that intelligence and technique can overcome raw strength. This changes everything. Lefcom. Lefcom Werd, Lefcom, Reedy, and Werd. News of the human training program spread beyond Valor Station. Other coalition military facilities began requesting human instructors. Earth's government received formal invitations to send more personnel. Not as students, but as teachers. Humanity's status in the galaxy was shifting from newcomers to valued members of the military community. But with increased visibility came increased scrutiny. The Coalition Council called for a formal evaluation of human capabilities. They wanted to understand exactly what Earth brought to the Alliance. A delegation of senior officers arrived at Valor Station to observe the humans in action and submit a report to the Council. Among the delegation was a Vakrian admiral named Kortvel, one of the highest-ranking military officers in the Coalition. He was old by Vakrian standards, his fur graying around his muzzle, but his amber eyes were still sharp and calculating. He had fought in every major coalition conflict for the past 30 years and had strong opinions about military matters. Instructor Thrak Nor assembled all the human students and their alien training partners for a demonstration. Amy stood at the front of the formation, now wearing the rank insignia of a senior training instructor. Beside her stood Kesal, who had been officially designated as her assistant instructor. Admiral Kortvel walked slowly through the ranks, examining each human with careful attention. When he reached Amy, he stopped. You are the one who lifted Instructor Thrak Nor. Yes, sir, Amy replied, and defeated Warrior Draktesh in single combat. Yes, sir. Kortvel's tail swished thoughtfully. I have read the reports. Many on the council find them difficult to believe. They say humans are too small, too weak, too soft for effective military service. They want me to recommend limiting human involvement to support roles only. Amy kept her expression neutral, but inside, her heart sank. After everything they had accomplished, the council still doubted them. However, Kortvel continued, I am not one who decides matters based on reports alone. I prefer to see with my own eyes. Show me what humans can do. Thraknor stepped forward. Sir, we have prepared a comprehensive demonstration. It will showcase human capabilities across multiple combat scenarios. For the next 2 hours, Amy and the other humans demonstrated their skills. They showed marksmanship, tactical planning, hand-to-hand combat, and physical conditioning. But more importantly, they showed how they had integrated with alien warriors, creating mixed-species teams that were more effective than any single-species unit. Kesal and Amy performed a demonstration fight, showing how human techniques could be adapted by other species. Draktesh explained how learning human methods had made him a better warrior. Solus demonstrated the strength training program Amy had designed for him, which had increased his already impressive power by 15%. Throughout it all, Admiral Kortvel watched in silence. His expression gave nothing away. When the demonstration ended, he stood and addressed the assembled warriors. I came here expecting to see novelty, he said. Interesting techniques that might have limited application. Instead, I have seen something that changes my understanding of military effectiveness. He began pacing, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. The coalition has relied on the same military doctrines for centuries. We recruit species based on their natural advantages. The Krenth for strength, the Vrix for speed, the Vakrians for aggression. We put them in specialized roles and expect them to perform those roles perfectly. Courtvel stopped and turned to face the humans. But your species does not fit this model. Humans have no single overwhelming advantage. They have adaptability. They have the ability to learn any role, master any skill, work with any species. They are generalists in a galaxy of specialists. He looked directly at Amy. More than that, they teach. A Vakrian warrior knows how to fight like a Vakrian, but a human warrior can fight like a Vakrian, a Krenth, a Vrix, or any combination thereof. They study, they learn, they incorporate techniques from every source, and then, they teach those techniques to others. Courtvel's expression softened slightly. My grandfather fought in the Coalition's war against the Sector 9 raiders. He told me stories of that conflict, of how we won through superior numbers and firepower. But he always said he wished we had been smarter, more creative in our tactics. Perhaps if we had humans then, fewer warriors would have died. The Admiral turned to address Instructor Thraknor. I will recommend to the Council that humans be fully integrated into all levels of Coalition military service. Furthermore, I will recommend that human training methods be incorporated into standard Coalition doctrine. Every warrior should have the opportunity to learn from humans, as these students have. Amy felt relief wash over her. Not just for herself, but for every human who had dreamed of walking among the stars as equals. They had done it. They had proven their worth. Courtvel approached Amy and offered the Vakrian salute. Thank you, Lieutenant Rodriguez. You and your fellow humans have given the Coalition a gift. You have reminded us that strength comes in many forms, and that the most dangerous warrior is the one who never stops learning. Amy returned the salute. Sir, we are honored to serve alongside the Coalition. Earth may be a death world, but it taught us one important lesson. The strongest survive not by being the biggest or the fastest, but by being the most adaptable. We hope to share that lesson with the galaxy. As the delegation departed, Kessal approached Amy with excitement in his eyes. This is it, Amy. Humans are truly part of the Coalition now. Not as guests or students, but as equals. We were always equals, Amy said gently. We just needed to prove it to everyone else. Draktesh joined them, his massive frame somehow less intimidating than it had been months ago. I have been thinking about what you said. About there being more than one way to be strong. I want to visit Earth someday. To see the world that created warriors like you. You would find it dangerous, Amy warned. Everything there evolved to survive in harsh conditions. Even our insects can be deadly. Draktesh's fangs showed in what was definitely a smile now. Good. I think I would like to see this death world of yours. To understand what shaped humanity into what you are. Amy looked around the training hall at the mixed species teams, at aliens of every kind, training together, learning from each other, becoming stronger through cooperation rather than competition. This was what the Coalition was supposed to be. Not just an alliance of convenience, but a true union, where every species contributed their unique strengths. She thought about the moment Thraknor had challenged her to lift him. How it had seemed impossible. How everyone expected her to fail. But humans had built their entire civilization on doing the impossible. On looking at challenges that should defeat them, and finding ways to overcome anyway. Hey Amy, Kessal said, breaking into her thoughts. Do you think other humans will come to Valor Station? I want to learn from different teachers, to see how other humans approach combat. I am sure they will, Amy replied. Earth has millions of trained soldiers, and now that the Council has approved full integration, many will want to serve in the Coalition military. Good, Kessel said firmly. The galaxy needs more humans. You make us better. Amy smiled. That was the highest compliment she could imagine. Not that humans were the strongest, or the fastest, or the best warriors, but that they made others better. That they elevated everyone around them through teaching, cooperation, and the stubborn refusal to give up that defined her species. She had come to Valor Station to prove that humans belonged in the galaxy. She had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. And this was just the beginning. Humanity was finally reaching for the stars, and the stars were reaching back.